It was a sunny day. The story is about a young woman named Elia. She is a simple and kind girl. Somehow she managed to get some seeds from the villagers, which she has now planted. But Elia is worried because she is not sure that she planted them correctly, so she sighed very heavily. And why should she even have to go through these problems? The girl has moved into the character of a romantic fantasy novel by Ladian and still can't comprehend it. Although there is a lot of love and romance in this novel, it is also no less cruel. As luck would have it, of all the heroes, she was the one who became the secondary villain from a completely destroyed family. The full name of this amazing girl is Ella Rotten. She is the daughter of Baron Rotten, who has incredible beauty. She has dazzling hair, like platinum melted by the sun, blue eyes like a clear sky, a clearly defined nose, and plump lips. Since Elia was only a minor character, she only appeared on a couple of pages. Public opinion of her was terrible, and her family had completely collapsed, largely due to the extravagant spending of her father and herself. After this, the Baron began to participate in business deals, because as the family's wealth diminished, something had to be done. Eventually, unfortunately, the man got deeply in debt, abandoned his daughter, and ran away, and it was at this moment that the girl moved into Ellie Rotten. She began to realize with horror that something was wrong, because people around her began to hate her and even want to kill her. The enraged crowd shouted for Ed Rotten to come out to them immediately, otherwise they threatened to sell his daughter to slave traders. The frightened girl trembled with fear as she watched all this, and her body was gripped by intense fear. Ellie realized that she needed to run immediately, despite the fact that she didn't have a penny in her pocket. The girl found the key to the back door and escaped, as planned, from the furious creditors and ended up in a remote mountain village. The village is isolated and outsiders rarely come here, but the people here have proven to be very friendly towards her. It was decided to stay here, especially since Ellie was very tired and she just needed to take a break. The girl's real body was quite strong, but in her new body, she only had to move and she began to feel tired. Ellie is sure that it will take her a very long time to get used to this body and its condition. The girl felt her eyelids become heavy and she was about to fall asleep. But she was frightened by some strange and very loud sound, as if something heavy had crashed to the ground. Jumping out of bed, Ellie looked up but saw nothing. Hoping that it was not some kind of wild animal, she nevertheless went outside to see what had happened there. The girl was even more horrified when she saw a man who was treating a little boy very badly. He was kicking the child. There is a strong rage in this man's gaze. He looks like a wild beast. The boy covered his head with his little fists and did not know where to hide from the villain. Ellie can't believe her eyes. Is the man really crazy and is now beating the child? She clutched the broom tightly in her hands, which she had taken with her out of fear when she left the house. Her gaze changed. She swung at the bastard to hit him as hard as possible. But something inexplicable prevented her from doing this. An ominous darkness emanated from the man, and she froze. The man, on the contrary, noticed a strange light emanating from her, which alerted the villain. He ominously said that it was time for her to meet her creator, and these words frightened Ellie even more. She didn't know what to expect, because you can expect anything from a crazy person, so she just closed her eyes, and besides, it was too late to run. But nothing happened. The man just stared at Ellie with surprise in his eyes, and his face changed dramatically. When the girl realized that she was not in any danger, she took courage and asked why he was behaving so badly. Then she glanced sharply at the crying boy, who covered his eyes with trembling hands. Ellie doesn't understand why the poor baby could deserve this. The girl sat down closer to him, asked if he was okay, and began to calm him down. The stranger looked at his hands and realized that his magic wasn't working, so he asked her who she was. But Ellie couldn't calm her ardor. She screamed, "How can he raise his hand against a child?" The girl hated this man so quickly that she wanted to pounce on him with her fists and do the same thing he did to the boy. After all, people like him only understand something when they get beaten. That's exactly what she did. She hit the man on the head with particular cruelty and felt relief. The scoundrel's legs immediately gave way, and he collapsed to the ground like a corpse that would never wake up again. The man turned out to be not so dangerous, but on the contrary, weaker than Ellie assumed, and he still dared to offend the child, the girl thought. She again turned her attention to the frightened boy. He was shaking from the horror that was happening now. Although he understood that everything was over, he could not calm down. The poor guy opened his mouth and started screaming even louder. Ellie doesn't know what words to choose to comfort the boy. She thought that maybe my kind smile would calm him down, and she smiled tenderly at him. The boy rushed into her arms. He clung to her as if she were his own mother. Ellie breathed a sigh of relief, but not for long. The child quietly said the word "Mama," and the girl realized that he was addressing her specifically. He touched her shoulders with his cold palms, but for some reason she felt inexplicably warm, as if she felt something familiar. The boy looked at Ellie with such sincere eyes that she almost cried. It seemed that this child was completely alone. But a difficult question arose in her head. What would she do with him now? After all, she couldn't leave him here to his fate. That would be inhumane. A few minutes later, the man woke up. He felt very bad, and after the blow, his head was splitting. Ellie tied him up and, despite the fact that he was heavy, dragged him to the intended place. If she had just left him, he would have woken up and done something strange again. The girl noticed some strange symbol on the man's neck. It was the first time she had seen something like that. Ellie is wildly curious to know what this image means, but she clenches her hands into fists and walks away. When she entered her room, she did not find the boy she had brought there, and she became nervous. She did put him on the bed before leaving, but most likely he decided that he had been abandoned again and ran away. It turned out that the child had crawled under the table and was watching her from there, barely breathing. After all, this place is unfamiliar to him. It's understandable why he's wary, Ellie thought. What happened to his parents? Why did he end up in that place alone with that madman? These questions were spinning in her head. The girl is sure that sooner or later these questions will be answered, but for now the boy needs to be rescued from there and calmed down. Smiling kindly again, Ellie offered the child something to eat, since he probably hadn't eaten for a long time and was now wildly hungry. Finally, they started eating. The boy said that the food was very tasty. He perked up and seemed to be in a better mood. The girl remembered that there was nothing like this in the original. Maybe this baby was also a minor character. She asked his name, to which he introduced himself as Darian. His name also means nothing to her. She is hearing this beautiful name for the first time. "Your parents are probably looking for you," Ellie asked, and tears appeared in the boy's eyes again. Then she extended her hand to him and apologized for accidentally making him cry. Darian threw himself into Ellie's arms again, but when he buried his nose in hers, he burst into tears even more. "I was in pain and scared," the boy shouted in a trembling voice. He said that the bad guy suddenly appeared and stole him while he was sleeping quietly in his bed. The girl stroked Darian's head and called him strong and brave for being able to endure all this. She wiped the tears from his tear-stained eyes and he became quiet. The boy began to feel calmer next to her. Ellie feels guilty for not walking him home, but even if she knew where the child lived, she's not sure she could take him there. This village is located in the mountains, so getting out of here is incredibly difficult. The girl promised that she would not leave him until his parents were found, and in the end, everything would be fine. Darian opened his mouth again and looked sincerely at Ellie, as if he had never seen such kind people as her. A few days later, the girl was about to go to the village. She asked Darian to look after the house and promised to return soon. Because another person appeared, the food began to run out quickly, so now it is necessary to buy it. Life with a child has not been difficult for Ellie in the last few days. The boy is well behaved, so there have been no problems. Darian is a well-mannered boy, but something still worries the girl. He continues to avoid any questions about his past. It is still not clear what kind of family he is from, what his parents did, but you shouldn't put pressure on him. Maybe he will tell you everything himself soon. You should wait a little. Having reached the village, one of the women told her that knights had recently arrived and said that the other day a magician had stolen the Duke's son and that they were now looking for him. Then everything fell into place and Ellie understood everything. The woman also clarified that the criminal was found tied up in the forest, and then the girl had no doubts. There is only one duke in the empire. His name is Kaidan Natan. Be it his studies or swordsmanship, even his impeccable appearance, he excelled in everything, receiving universal praise. Having inherited the duchy, even the Emperor of Rotangia, Ivan Ricardo, began to fear him, because the Duke was ready to do anything for the main character. But unfortunately, he never managed to win the heart of his beloved. He became obsessed and began to commit crimes. This is all because he is a minor male character in this novel. When Ellie returned home, even Darian noticed that something was wrong with her. She stared at one point for several minutes. The girl said that everything was fine and she was just thinking about food because she was hungry from the journey. They made the bread together, and all that was left was to put it in the oven to bake. But their idyll was interrupted by knights who broke into their house without permission and frightened them. "We found Darian. Grab the kidnapper now," one of the men cried out. Ellie hugged the child close to her, trying to protect him. But she herself was scared to death. The girl thought that the end had come for them and narrowed her eyes. Still, they were put into a carriage and taken somewhere. Ellie's mouth was tied. She couldn't utter a word, and tears flowed from her beautiful eyes like a stream. She couldn't do anything. All the way, Darian continues to repeat that this sweetheart is not a kidnapper at all, and that on the contrary, she helped him. Soon they arrived, and it was time for Darian to go out, but he really didn't want to leave Ellie, who he had already gotten used to. The knights do not understand what this girl did that could attract Lord Darian so much. They cannot offend the Duke's son, because the boy is already very upset and trembling with tears. They had no choice but to pull the girl out of the carriage along with him. Ellie saw before her the Duke's luxurious estate, which she had only read about before, and could not imagine that she would ever end up in it. This estate is like something out of a fairy tale. It shines in the sun like a pure emerald. The exterior is already stunning, but the interior decoration far surpasses the Baron's estate. "Please come in," said the Duke, his voice alone making Ellie's legs shake. The girl recognized him as one of Darian's kidnappers, black hair with a faint blue tint and blood-red eyes that could not be confused with others. A strong, chilling aura that perfectly matches his sculpted face. Ellie froze in a daze. She looked closely at his appearance, and she had no doubt that she was not mistaken. The girl tried to escape from the tenacious hands of the strong warriors, but to no avail. The Duke saw his son clinging to this woman and did not understand the reason, as if she had bewitched him. The knights told Kaidan that the boy hugged her the entire way they got to the estate. They suspected that the woman was using some kind of mind control magic. The Duke tore off Ellie's blindfold so she could speak. He was very angry. He decided that the girl was trying to grab at any straw, since her family was destroyed and there was no other way out. He looked at her as if he wanted to kill her with his gaze. It was both frightening and attractive. When Kaidan said the girl's name, she realized that he already knew everything about her. Ellie began to explain that there had been a misunderstanding. She said that she had barely made ends meet after running away from the debt collectors and found a place to live. And then suddenly a man appeared in front of her who had kidnapped Mr. Darian. Kaidan refuses to believe this. He thinks that the girl is simply looking for false excuses for herself. The man rudely asked the girl to shut up and not make up any nonsense. Otherwise, he threatened to cut out her tongue. Darian covered his father's mouth with his small hand so that he would stop being rude and calm down. The child asked not to express himself in such a way and to communicate more respectfully with the woman who saved him. The Duke, of course, did not like his son's behavior. He ordered the child to be taken away from here immediately, and the knights immediately carried out his order. It is unknown what could happen now. When the girl was left alone with Kaidan, she became scared, although she tries not to show it. As expected, nothing good came of it. The girl was put in prison. She was terribly cold and hungry like a beast. Half a day had passed since she was locked in this damp and dark place. But soon she was again released to the Duke for interrogation. The man tries to get the truth out of her. "Do you have any other excuses?" asked an angry Kaidan Natan, glaring at the girl. If he had been absolutely certain of her guilt, he would have thrown her in prison instead of bringing her here. Elia dared to object that he had no evidence against her, only guesses. The Duke realized that this woman was not as stupid as rumors said, and again ordered her to be locked up in prison. Does Kaidan really not believe his own son, or is he just making fun of the poor girl who already had it tough? Ellie thinks about the baby. When the knights grabbed him, he cried so hard that he could hardly breathe, and what if he was still crying? Strictly speaking, Darian Natan is not the Duke's biological son. He is actually the son of the Duke's sister. Unfortunately, both of the boy's parents died in an accident. After this, the Duke, the only remaining relative, adopted their child. Since this was the child of his beloved sister, the Duke could not help but love him. He indulged all his whims. From what the girl read, his love was beyond description. Everything was exactly the opposite. Ellie is very hungry. Her body has become heavy, as if a fever is about to start. She began to feel hot and cold, and she realized that she had a fever. A knight entered the dungeon, and in a loud voice told her to come out, since the Duke had ordered her to be taken out. The girl became wary. Had Kaidan already decided on her punishment? And now, a minute later, Ellie again sees the Duke's displeased expression in front of her, wondering what he wants this time. Darian threw himself into the woman's arms and pressed himself tightly against her, as if he hadn't seen her for ages. Out of the blue, Kaidan asked Ellie for a favor to put his son to bed, but if she tried to do something stupid, he threatened to break her arms. Something very similar to a bracelet was attached to the girl's hand, and she asked what it was. The man replied that she could easily find out the answer if she ignored his warning. Whatever it was scarier than it looked, Ellie thought. The Duke also added that he would inform her about the punishment in the morning, then turned around and left the room. The woman will, of course, put the child to bed, but she herself will have to try very hard to fall asleep. They sat down on the bed, and the boy admitted that he cried for 6 hours because he wanted so much to be near her. His cute little face is terribly swollen, and his eyes are different. He looks tired and exhausted, but he himself insists that everything is fine. The only thing that worries him is that no one believes in the innocence of his dear Elia. He became so attached to her that he couldn't even sleep without her. "You didn't do anything," the boy shouted in a tearful voice. In this situation, he feels guilty. Ellie began to console Darian. She said that the adults who did not believe both of them were to blame. Twilight had long since covered the mansion. It was late and time for them to sleep. Tomorrow would be a new, unpredictable day. But the girl can't get enough of looking at the child up close. He seems even cuter. She thinks that she is seeing him for the last time. At their first meeting, she thought the boy was 5 or 6 years old, but judging by the fact that now is the beginning of the original story, he is about 8 years old. Ellie recalls that Darian's growth was unusually slow at that age. In his sleep, the child began calling for his mother again. He must be having a dream because he misses her so much. The girl thought and wondered all night about what decision the Duke would make, but by morning she finally fell asleep. Morning came instantly for her, and here she stands in front of Duke Kaidan, not knowing what outcome awaits her. The man threw a pile of papers on the table and asked to read them and sign them. They woke her up before dawn, and now they are forcing her to read something. This is already like a punishment. The Duke reminded her that refusal would lead her straight to the cell and asked her not to ask unnecessary questions. Ellie doesn't know how to react to what she reads, and her face changes dramatically. The document states that she must strictly follow the orders of Duke Kaidan Natan by working as a nanny for his child. The girl is not particularly happy with this arrangement, but she has no choice, and it is much better than sitting in prison for an unknown number of years. The Duke waited impatiently for Ellie to say at least a word. The agreement also states that all her family debts will be paid, and later she will receive double compensation. Kaiden clarified that compensation would be paid if she was cleared of suspicion. The girl signed the document without thinking, and a smile blossomed on her face. The Duke saw Ellie so happy for the first time, and she saw doubt in his decision on his face apparently. A serious check would be arranged. To be honest, the last condition is quite generous, but there is a reason for it. Ed Rotten borrowed money from a notorious guild called Rayon, which is famous for its extortionate interest rates. They do the most inhumane things. Staying in the Duke's estate is much better than being caught and sold by the Rayon Guild. The close surveillance, of course, upsets the woman, but she is confident that in this way her innocence will be proven very soon. The Duke's rival, the one who watched from the sidelines and waited for the right moment to strike, was Marquis Passion d'Or. The butler approached Ellie and introduced himself as Lubert. He said that the Duke had given him all the information, and to begin with, he offered to take the girl to the room. Ellie will be served by other maids, so her job is to be close to Master Darien and fulfill all his wishes. Starting from lunchtime, she will be required to go down to the dining room to eat. Of course, she must do this together with Mr. Darien. The girl thought that if the Duke did not have any unexpected business, he would also be present at dinner. It was so exciting for her to eat at the same table with Kaiden. She was already a little embarrassed. This is the Duke's order, and Ellie has no other options, but she will try to endure everything. When it was time for the meal, the girl thought of only one thing: that Kaiden would not poison her. None of them say a word now. All you can hear is the clatter of cutlery on the dishes and Darien's quiet chomping. The Duke, as always, looks serious and unperturbed, as if he is deep in thought. Ellie decided to take care of Darien. She wanted to feed him. The Duke reacted immediately. He slammed his hand on the table as if he sensed some kind of danger. Kaiden decided that the girl was up to something bad, or even wanted to harm the boy. Ellie felt the tense atmosphere. She was irritated by the fact that she began to be afraid of the Duke, although she did nothing terrible. It must be his eyes, which looked like they could throw daggers, Ellie thought. It's hard to believe that one day a man with such eyes will fall head over heels in love with the heroine. Perhaps his gaze will soften someday, but for now, the girl finds it very difficult to believe. The Duke silently stood up from the table and headed towards the exit, without even saying goodbye. Darien said that he had also eaten his fill and they could go. At that moment, Ellie felt something was wrong. Her eyes darkened and her head began to spin. Some inexplicable pain gripped her head. She closed her eyes from the unpleasant sensation. The boy became very nervous because he saw that Ellie was ill and could not move. Why did this happen so suddenly? Yesterday everything wasn't so bad, the girl thought. Kaiden watches all this. He sees that Ellie can barely stand on her feet. The man is in a stupor. The girl suddenly fell to the floor, so no one had time to do anything or react in any way. Ellie woke up as if in some kind of dream. She heard someone's familiar voice. The dizziness disappeared. She felt better, as if nothing had happened. When she turned her head to the right, she saw the Duke in front of her, with a girl standing next to him. He was holding that girl by the shoulders, and he had a strange expression on his face, as if something had happened. The Duke, very intently and silently, looked into the eyes of that girl, as if he was trying to hear something from her, and this something must be important to him. Then a dialogue began between them, but their conversation was difficult to hear. Very soon, Ellie realized that this was a scene from the original, and she knew what was about to happen. Kaiden began to approach the girl and almost touched her lips with his lips. Ellie covered her mouth with her hands, which involuntarily opened in surprise. She saw herself in that very girl, but she couldn't understand what that could mean. She woke up in a cold sweat. It turned out that it really was a dream. Now the thought is spinning in her head about why, of all the things, she dreamed about this one. Darien was already looking at her with huge eyes, and the Duke and the butler were also next to her. Out of joy that she had woken up, the boy threw himself at her with hugs. Ellie remembered that she passed out while eating with Darien, and it seemed like she scared everyone. The Duke, piercing the girl with his gaze, told her that she had not come to her senses for a day and a half. "Am I that sick?" the girl asked. Ellie was scared, deciding that everything was much more serious than a normal temperature. She asked to explain to her what the matter was, otherwise she would go crazy with assumptions. The butler said that her condition had improved significantly, but her temperature was still high, so she would need to take medication for a few days. The Duke is worried that Ellie's health condition could affect Darian. Even though Lubert said that the boy could not get infected from her, Kaiden still ordered a thorough examination of Darian. The child started to act up. He wants to stay with Ellie because he waited so long for her to wake up, and he doesn't want to leave her at all. The Duke rudely ordered the boy to be taken out of this room immediately. It seems that Darian is broken to the depths of his soul, but here Ellie is powerless. She cannot go against Kaiden. The Duke thinks that the girl is again pretending to be a wholly innocent. He asks her to stop this useless performance. He said that she was full of boundless malice, consumed by greed and avarice, and would never save Darian for no reason. The girl can't even say that she has become a different person, that it was Ellie from the book. Kaiden grabbed her and started screaming that the boy was absolutely convinced that she had saved him, although in reality it was all a play. The man also started talking about some kind of curse on his body, but Ellie couldn't understand anything. She just looked at the Duke with frightened eyes. In her opinion, he is talking nonsense, and no matter what she says, he will not believe her. Ellie replied that she didn't want to explain anything because it was completely pointless. But she said only one thing, that if he lived in constant mistrust, then people would leave him, one after another. And in the end, he may die alone, abandoned by everyone like a dying light. The man did not expect such impudence from Ellie. He did not think that she would ever be able to object to him. The girl went too far because she was very upset. She regrets a little what she said. Ellie was overcome with belated regrets, but there was nothing she could do to bring it back. Kaiden silently turned around and left the room, leaving Ellie confused. She stared at the wall and thought for a few seconds. Her words shocked the Duke so much, although there was nothing special in them. Suddenly, Ellie felt like she was struck by electricity. She remembered something. The words she said to Kaiden were spoken by the main character, Lydiana. Hearing them, the Duke became obsessed with that girl. Will he really become obsessed with Ellie now? It's beyond my comprehension. You could say that everything will be turned upside down. She tries to reassure herself that everything will be okay since Ellie Rotten is an insignificant supporting character. But what curse was the Duke talking about? When the girl saved Darian, something strange happened. The magician did indeed do something, but was it a curse? Ellie looked in the mirror and thought, there were no problems before, but maybe this is a slow-acting curse. Annie's maid brought the girl the ointment she had asked for before bathing. The maid gave Ellie the jar and was about to leave, but the girl stopped her. There was a very noticeable dark spot on the maid's leg, and Ellie asked if it hurt her to walk with this injury. The maid lowered her head, buried her face in the floor, and replied that it was just a minor bruise. Annie asked permission to leave as she still had a lot of other things to do, and then left very quickly. Ellie thought that something was wrong here, and this maid was somehow suspicious. The way she hesitated was like the behavior of an agitated criminal who was about to be caught. At night, when everyone had long since fallen asleep, the girl was awakened by a strange sound. She looked up and saw Annie the maid again, who had entered the room without knocking or asking permission. The maid apologized. She said that she decided to change the candle while they were sleeping, but accidentally woke them up. She also added that Mr. Darian has a weak body, so they always keep a candle lit with different herbs. Ellie had even more questions, but she decided not to interrogate the servants, but to calmly figure everything out herself. It's suspicious how quietly she entered, and the candle is practically new. There was no need to change it. The girl took the candle in her hands. It smelled like ordinary herbs and seemed to be incapable of causing any harm. Deciding that her suspicions were just her imagination, she blew out the candle anyway, and she opened the window wide to air out the room. At this time, the girl saw that the Duke had just returned home. He must have had serious business to attend to since he returned so late. She decided not to wait until the morning, but to meet with the Duke right now to discuss something important. Otherwise, she will go crazy overnight from the pile of thoughts in her head. The Duke decided that the matter was quite serious, since Ellie had requested an audience with him at such a time. Of course, the man could not refuse her. He thought that the conversation would concern the boy. The girl said that when he grabbed her by the shoulders, she got a huge bruise. She decided not to leave it like that and asked the maid to bring some bruise cream. Without letting her finish, Kaiden shoved a small jar into Ellie's hands, saying that it was medicine. She was surprised. It was unexpected for her. Was he really tormented by his conscience that he had caused pain and thus left a bruise? Looking very tired, the Duke sat down in a chair and asked to quickly get to the point. The girl continued the conversation. She explained that one of the maids was acting suspiciously. That girl's name is Annie. She has short hair and big brown eyes. She entered silently, supposedly to change a new candle, and looked scared, as if she had been caught. "You're acting suspicious too," Ellie said. The Duke countered that the situation had changed, and the curse on her body proved a lot. The girl persistently asked him to explain to her what this curse was, which he was talking about more than once. It is a form of domination magic, a curse that involves brainwashing into enslavement. Even after Ellie's explanation, the Duke refuses to believe her. She thought that further conversation would be a waste of time. He has big trust issues. Morning came and it was time for a meal. Ever since this girl ended up in this body, everything has gone wrong, and the sight of the Duke's indifferent face irritates the girl again. Ellie said she wasn't hungry, but in fact she just lost her appetite, and then the boy also refused to eat. He said that they were one and therefore should behave the same, which made the girl smile. The baby is so cute, trying to cheer Ellie up. She suggested that they bake cookies together, to which Darian replied that he had classes now and asked her to wait for him. The girl remembered that he always studied after eating. The Duke looked at them sternly and said, "Do what you want after all. His lordship is not so petty." After some time, they prepared a whole basket of delicious cookies, and Darian decided to treat his father. The boy is sure that he will like it very much. To be honest, Ellie doesn't really want to go to the Duke, but since Darian asks, she can't refuse him. The child proudly brought his father a basket of hot cookies and placed them on his table. Kaiden was confused. He said that he was not hungry yet and told them to put them away. Darian asked to try at least one cookie, because they are very tasty. The man suddenly threw the basket right in front of the boy's face. Ellie guessed that everything would go exactly this way as soon as she saw the displeased Duke. "Father, I hate you more than anyone in the world," shouted the angry Darian and quickly left. Kaiden's expression changed. He turned pale because he didn't expect to hear such words from the boy. The girl ran after Darian to calm him down. She didn't think that everything would end so badly, but unfortunately it did. Ellie didn't have time to catch up with him. He locked himself in the room, not wanting to see anyone. Apparently, he wants to be alone. He looked incredibly scared, the girl thought. And how did it all turn out? It would have been better to let him go to class and none of this would have happened. Although what happened was unexpected, Ellie had never seen the Duke's face like that before. Since it shocked him, he should have just eaten the cookie in the first place. When night came, the girl quietly entered the room where the child was already sleeping. She sat down next to him, touched his black hair, and took a deep breath. Ellie heard someone knock softly on the door. But who could it be at such a late hour? The maid apologized for such a late visit. She said that the Duke had ordered her to be brought to the office. But the girl thought that Kaiden had left the estate since he wasn't even at dinner. But more importantly, after what happened during the day, the Duke would never have called her to him so late at night. The maid said that he had already returned and she should hurry. If this is really the Duke's order, she cannot disobey him. It will only make things worse. The girl looked at the sleeping boy and decided to go to Kaiden after all. Together with the maid, she walked down the corridor. The estate was very quiet today. Ellie asked how her ankle was because it was badly bruised. "I processed it and now everything is fine," the girl replied. Her leg is wrapped in bandages, which means everything is not quite okay, but why is she lying? Ellie became wary. Something was clearly wrong here. Suddenly, her stomach started to hurt. It happened so sharply that the girl screamed in pain. She sat down on the floor and tore the bandage off the maid's leg. It turned out that she was faking pain to do this. The maid's leg had the same mark as the kidnapper's, which meant she was in cahoots with him. Ellie should go back to Darian now before anything happens to him. But she didn't have time to do this. What she was so afraid of happened. That same kidnapper grabbed her from behind. The man holds her by the hair and shouts where she put that boy. The girl looked closely at him and at that very second recognized that scoundrel. He has a wild look, as if he wants to kill her. Judging by the man's appearance, he recently escaped from prison and may now commit a crime again. The kidnapper looked at the maid, who stood like a pillar and did nothing, and he ordered her to find the boy immediately. Ellie remembered that the last time she met him, he used magic, but for some reason he couldn't use it now. If they want to find Darian, they can use magic. The man grabbed the girl's clothes tightly. He is very strong and angry. But something happened. Literally a second later, the kidnapper pushed her away from himself, and she fell. Ellie fell straight into the arms of the Duke, who was nearby in time. She asked how you got here, but the more important thing is that the real kidnapper is here now, and he needs to be caught. Kaiden said that he had sent knights after him and that he would be caught and punished very soon. He was supposed to return in the morning, but he felt something was wrong and he was not mistaken. The main question that worries him is where Darian is and whether everything is okay with him. The girl asked not to worry about him because he was now in the room and was not in any danger. Before leaving him alone, she woke the boy up and asked him to hide. She left, confident that nothing would happen to Darian. The girl promised to be careful and come back quickly. The boy looked at her with frightened eyes. As if he felt something, he almost cried. She smiled at him so that he would calm down a little and let her go. When she entered the room, she was horrified. Everything around was turned upside down. They searched the room so thoroughly that absolutely everything was lying on the floor. Ellie realized with horror that Darian was not there. Perhaps something terrible had happened. He could have been kidnapped again. Perhaps something terrible happened. The boy could have been kidnapped again. But suddenly his quiet voice was heard from behind, and it turned out that he was hiding in a secret door in the floor. Darian hugged Ellie. He was shaking either from the cold or from fear, but he was definitely not completely okay. The girl began to calm the child. She tenderly wiped the tears from his eyes. Ellie turned to the Duke. She thanked him for his help. Thanks to him, she was not hurt anywhere. But is he okay? Because the man caught her falling from the second floor. Sometimes people look fine on the outside, but they may have internal injuries. Maybe he just doesn't let it show. The girl approached him. She had a worried expression on her face. She didn't understand how she found herself very close to the Duke, so close that she could feel his breath, but he didn't even move from his place. Ellie jumped back from him sharply. She was confused. Kaiden himself didn't react in any way. He stood with an impassive face and looked at her. Then he spoke to Darian. He asked if everything was okay with him and examined the boy to see if he was injured. The man sat down closer to him, preparing to say something important. He asked him to stay with the knights and promised to take care of everything else, and the child nodded his head in agreement. The Duke's child is almost kidnapped again, but he is surprisingly calm, or at least pretending to be. A man does not want to show his weakness in front of a child so as not to upset him even more. If he showed emotion, Darian would be scared. The boy was already under a lot of stress. Although the Duke is cold with Ellie, he tries to be attentive to his child, a quality that the girl really likes in Kaiden. The man grabbed her and threw her over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes. Ellie did not resist. "Don't make noise, you're coming with me," said the Duke. She didn't even try to contradict him. It was simply useless, especially since she had calmed down and was now sure that he couldn't harm her. Then everything happened quickly. The place where Kaiden dragged her was the gathering place of the kidnappers and their accomplices. As the man had ordered earlier, the knights seized all the suspicious individuals and gathered them in one place. After checking, they found the same marks on the bodies of these people as on the body of the magician. The kidnappers did not immediately reveal who the customer was, but Kaiden tried to beat the truth out of them. He was especially strict with the kidnapper who was trying to find the boy. Ellie knew that the Duke was very strong, but today she saw it with her own eyes. She was impressed by it. When the criminal was brought back to consciousness, Kaiden showed him the document. It was the contract by which Marquis Dior hired them through the magic tower. The man already had evidence, which he received from the owner of the tower. He offered the tower's owner more rights to mine the magic stones, and he agreed without any hesitation. And this document is official confirmation that this kidnapper was expelled from the magic tower. This is how the Duke decided everything. Without any problems, it was easy for him. The only thing that worried Ellie was that since her transfer into this body, the original began to change little by little. But she knows that Kaiden is capable of handling any task, so everything should be fine. This man is confident and strong, and also has many connections. He turned around and saw the girl looking at him intently, as if she was about to say something. Ellie took courage. She smiled and told him that he was very handsome. "Now that everything is sorted out, you can go," said the imperturbable Duke. "You won't interrogate me anymore? Will you?" asked the girl. She was surprised that he was letting her go so easily. Well, at least she's no longer on the suspect list, which means Kaiden has calmed down about her and she can relax. Ellie returned to the room where Darian was waiting impatiently for her. She started apologizing for promising him she would come back faster, but it took longer. The child does not understand why she is making excuses, because she is doing all this to save him, and those bad people should be apologizing. He really wants the day to come when his dad apologizes to Ellie. Even now that the misunderstanding has been cleared up, it is difficult to believe that the Duke will ever decide to apologize. But the girl almost no longer feels offended by him. He is just cold as ice. That is his character, and nothing can be done about it. Today was a busy day, and they need to get a good rest, especially since it is already night and time to go to bed. But since everything has been decided, tomorrow they will be able to return to their everyday peaceful life. The next day, the butler announced a banquet in honor of the emperor's birthday. All aristocrats invited to the banquet must come with a partner, unless they are married. So they decided to ask the girl to become the Duke's partner, and she had no reason to refuse. But the girl remembered that the banquet was the place where Lydiana and Kaiden first met. It might not be a bad idea to go to the banquet to see if the plot is going as it should. Will the Duke really just let her live on the estate? The man ordered that Ellie be prepared for the banquet immediately. Everything had to be at the highest level. The preparations didn't take long, and after a while, Darian's delighted eyes were already looking at her. He admires her beauty. She is always beautiful, but today she looks special. The child showered Ellie with compliments, and who could have taught him such manners? He will grow up to be a real gentleman. He said that she looked like a princess from a fairy tale, and that her father was very lucky to have such a partner. At that moment, the Duke just entered, ready to go to the banquet. The man focused his gaze on Ellie because she is irresistible or even stunning. She looked at him and understood that this man was now delighted with her beauty. Kaiden approached the girl and said that it was time for them to hit the road. The girl noticed that the boy was still upset with the Duke, but she believed that he would soon forget about it. Darian turned to her. He said that he wanted to go with him, but Ellie did not know what to answer him, she thought. Then he looked at the Duke with such sad eyes that could melt any icy heart. Kaiden looked down and said he was very ashamed that he didn't try the cookie and broke it. He handed the child a bag of cookies and said that he had made them himself. He thought that, of course, they wouldn't compare to those the baby had prepared, but they should still be tasty. A little later, they still went to the banquet. It was already evening outside, and it quickly got dark. Ellie and Kaiden sat across from each other and just remained silent. The Duke buried his face in some papers with an important air. The girl understood that he was busy, but she didn't think that he would spend the entire journey working. After some time, they finally arrived at the imperial palace and were greeted by the emperor's polite servants. The Duke offered his hand to the lady and respectfully helped the blonde beauty out of the carriage. She never thought he could be so nice. The man was strikingly handsome. It made Ellie's heart beat faster and a shiver ran through her body. Well, for tonight they are so-called partners. They are both charming and suit each other. When they entered the huge hall, the girl focused her gaze on something, as if she had turned to stone. A crowd of people looked at them and the Duke closely, and Ellie felt awkward. She was not used to such close attention. Never before had she been under such close surveillance. The Duke noticed that the girl was confused and asked her to simply ignore the looks of these people and try to just relax. Before, Kaiden's gaze had scared her, but now, strangely enough, she felt relieved. A cute guy with long white hair approached them. He said, "Long time no see." It was Marquise Passion d'Or. The man also asked the Duke who this beauty was next to him. He decided that judging by the fact that they came as partners, they were close enough to each other. This Passion d'Or is terribly curious. He probably rushed here without wasting a second, thought the Duke. Ellie seems very familiar to the man, as if they had already met somewhere. And yet the girl cannot relax when they look at her with such a suspicious gaze. Kaiden said that his partner was quite fragile and needed to rest a little after the journey. He took Ellie by the hand and they headed somewhere. Passion d'Or shouted after him that the lady should not become too attached to the Duke and should be careful. Finally, Kaiden brought the girl to the balcony where she could rest. She hasn't been to a banquet for too long and she needs to get used to so many people. But now that everything had calmed down, Ellie noticed that Passion had been watching her all this time. He was even more unpleasant alive, she thought. The Duke said that the banquet would last until midnight, but he didn't exactly plan to stay until the end. It was quite possible to leave earlier. After receiving the gifts, even the Emperor would probably leave. Their conversation was interrupted by a girl. She came into them and apologized, saying that she had the wrong door, and quickly left the balcony. But Ellie caught up with her. It seems she recognized someone in her. Grabbing the poor fellow by the hand and looking closely at her face, Ellie realized that this was definitely Lady Ladiana. In the original, this is where the Duke's obsession with the main character began. Ellie decided that it was better to smile so as not to scare the girl. Her departure could cause strong deviations. "I can go out," said the girl, "and you can stay here." They definitely had something to discuss, but the Duke had already reached the door and was in a hurry to leave. Ellie was scared because if he left, everything could change and not go according to plan. Still, Kaiden managed to leave, as if he was afraid of something. This is very bad, because now the original plot is completely out of control. The girl grabbed her head. She doesn't know what to do now. Is it really impossible to fix anything? At that moment, Ladiana turned to her and asked how she knew her name, since she had said it when she grabbed her hand. The girl did not answer, and out of nowhere a strong wind began to blow, disturbing Ladiana's hair. Ellie carefully adjusted the flowers on the lady's head, and she thanked her for her concern. Ladiana is delighted by Ella's beauty, her kindness and tenderness. She wants to know her name. There would be no problem if the young lady said it, so she immediately said, "Ellie Rotten." Ladiana's expression changed noticeably, and she asked, "Are you really from the Rotten family?" She was so surprised by this. Judging by her reaction, Ella's personality worries her. It's probably because the girl has a bad reputation, and there were rumors about their family's deaths. Well, at least she can breathe easier now. The moment for the gift-giving ceremony has arrived. Emperor Ivan Ricardo thanks the guests for the fact that so many of them have gathered for his birthday. Having seen the main character in person, Ellie found his image even more extravagant and interesting. Next, Duke Kaiden Naten presented a gift to His Majesty. He prepared this gift especially for His Majesty and hopes that he will like it. What is this? Exactly the same gift as described in the original? Ellie wondered. It was a sacred sword imbued with the power of Possession. According to the novel, the Duke found it in a forgotten ancient temple. Possession is not an ordinary god, but an ancient forgotten deity, one who ruled over death and curses, a god of darkness. Still, the Duke managed to get something like that, and the Emperor is impressed. In a normal situation, this would have ended in a verbal battle, but today everything ended so easily. Ellie believes that such minor changes do not matter. Some time passed after returning from the banquet, unexpectedly, but these days were calm. The attitude towards Ellie in the estate has softened considerably since the charges were dropped. Even the knights who had previously shown hostility became friendly. She even learned their names. Every day, Darian grew taller and taller. A lot began to change in him. He became more serious and mature. They became even more attached to each other and could not be separated. But there is one problem. She started having troubles again because of her father. One day they had a huge scandal. He even hit her. He took out loans and listed her as collateral. The man even agreed to have her sold into slavery if he did not pay off the debt. And now the man demands that his daughter demand money from the Duke. Ellie hated her father even more. He reminds her more of a demon than a man. And how did he even dare to come to her and shout throughout the entire mansion? But the knights captured him, and the girl hopes to never see the impudent Baron again. The very thought of him made Ellie furious. She wanted to hit him at least once. Besides, she had only just managed to clear her name. Did he really think the Duke would listen to her? Darian is worried about Ellie, because after this incident, her cheek is swollen, and the girl herself is worried that because of this, the boy almost missed breakfast. When they returned to the table, they told the Duke that the classes had been a bit long. One day, the lady noticed a pile of bags with medicinal herbs on the floor. The maid said that these were gifts from the Duke. Now, even the Duke seems suspiciously friendly to her, although his voice is still cold. While the boy was practicing swordsmanship, Ellie entered a fully fledged library office. She kept thinking about which book to choose, and she was intrigued by the unusual cover. When she opened this book, her face changed from what she saw. There was a picture inside. She recognized the girl in this painting, as she is well acquainted with the plot. The Duke quietly entered the library, took the photo from Ellie's hands, and looked at it sadly. The man said that this was his sister, and he personally painted her when Becca was alive. He began to remember her and became very sad because he misses her very much and often remembers his soulmate. The lady was tormented by her conscience. She thought that she should not have touched such a personal thing. But the Duke noted that Ellie had good taste since she chose this book to read. "It's a well-written novel. It's quite interesting," Kaiden added. He looked closely at the lady who was now clutching this book tightly. He asked what was wrong with her face. "You're just saying strange things," she replied with surprised eyes. In fact, this book turned out to be completely empty. There is not a single word in it. The man is outraged. He sees that something is clearly written in it. Why doesn't she see anything in it? Ellie even brought the knights, but they say that all the pages are filled with text. It looks like she's the only one who sees the book as empty. But what the hell, are they playing a prank on her? This is true, but Ellie doesn't know how to prove it to them. They will soon start to think she's crazy. So the girl gave in and said that everything is fine. But at that very moment, she felt incredible pain, some kind of evil force. Out of nowhere, an unknown monster appeared from the book, its grin frightening absolutely everyone, but not the Duke. Kaiden dealt with the intruder with one blow and didn't even flinch. So this is what is meant by using the sword's energy, Ella thought. The Duke ordered an immediate request for an audience with the magic tower, and to call the knights. He will conduct a search of the estate. What happened here anyway, and why did it happen when the girl picked up the book? Why is it she always gets into this mess? Why is she so unlucky? Kaiden turned to her. He said that she had a face like she was afraid that he would suspect her again. He said that he was not going to interrogate her. He remembered her words when she told about the suspicious maid who secretly entered at night to change the candle. After catching the criminals, they examined all the candles in the estate. As a result, it was discovered that the candles contained toxic plant extracts. These are poisonous plants, colorless and odorless, difficult to detect, and were only found with the help of a magic tower. Then it becomes clear why Darian looks younger. If Ella hadn't said so, they wouldn't have found out. This is not the first time this has happened, and the Duke has no choice but to believe the girl that the book is actually empty. Ella had trouble sleeping that night. She looked out the window at the moon and replayed everything that had happened in her head. The girl probably won't be able to fall asleep until the morning, even though she tries not to think about the bad at least until the morning. She thought that most likely the Duke was not sleeping either now because he was worried. Ella decided that it wouldn't hurt to take a walk before bed and breathe some fresh air. Maybe then sleep would come to her. Maybe it's because this is her first time out for a walk at such a late hour, but everything around her seems a little different. She was walking and met the Duke there, who also looked restless. Their eyes met. He, like her, went out for a walk due to insomnia. He asked what she was doing here so late. It was a bit chilly outside at night. The girl explained that she couldn't sleep either and suggested that they take a short walk together. Why did she even open her mouth? Now she feels awkward waiting for an answer. And then there's his chilling gaze, from which you want to run away or fall through the ground. The man replied, "Do whatever you want," turned around and started to leave, but Ellie, without thinking twice, followed him. Even though he answered her a little rudely, her legs seemed to run after him on their own accord. He began to look better than before. A barely noticeable smile appeared on his face. To break the silence, she asked him why he saved her. The man did not answer her, but only asked a counter-question about why she saved Darian from the magician in that village. He claims that he is still looking for evidence against her and simply asks for an answer to the question posed. Even though the Duke says he doesn't believe her, why do his words sound like an apology? Ellie replied that she saved the boy because she saw him right in front of her. That magician beat Darian, and anyone would have done the same thing if they saw a similar situation. Now that the girl had answered the question that interested him, Kaiden simply fell silent, because that was all he was interested in. The man made a stony face, trying not to show any emotion. But Ellie didn't let him leave so easily. She screamed after him. Since he was able to recognize the curse on her, did he know how to remove this curse? The Duke stopped. It seems he has options on how to help her and has something to tell. A man named Allegro Vian, the current owner of the Magic Tower, Ellie read about him in a book. But there he was described as an eccentric and greedy person. The Duke said that he had long wanted to meet her, and it was she who told him about her curse. This meeting can certainly help her. Allegro Vian also said that he was interested in something about the thirst for knowledge, but it was better not to get attached to him, but simply act in your own interests. Kaiden promised to set up a meeting with them soon. The girl realized that the Duke and Allegro Vian did not get along with each other. This was clear even from the intonation of his voice. She didn't even think that the next time to meet with the owner of the tower would come so soon, or rather today. A smiling man met her at the tower and greeted her warmly. He introduced himself and invited her to sit down and have tea with him. For some reason, Ellie felt like their roles had changed. Her position was truly ambiguous. The man complained that his busy schedule did not allow him to meet her. The Duke's story was simply unbelievable to him. Nothing had interested him so much for a long time. Then he asked how she was feeling, and at first the lady did not understand what he was talking about. "Does my presence not affect you in any way? Do you not tremble with fear and do you not choke?" he continued. She replied that she was fine, but why was he asking? What did the Duke tell him that he was carrying this? The man admitted that Ellie had been cursed, but it had no effect. Then she opened the enchanted book without any problems, and this amazed him. Could an ordinary girl do that? He asked her to address him simply as Allegro, and not formally, because he really wanted to be friends with her. He really wanted to hear his name from her lips, and he asked her to pronounce it. He looked at the lady as if something would happen if she called him by his name. "You are much more talkative than I would have thought, Mr. Vian," the girl replied, and they decided to get down to business. "This curse has already lost its power, and besides, even its magic does not work on her." Ellie was very surprised when she saw that even Mr. Vian's magic did not work on her. The girl is even a little disappointed by this. She sits with her mouth open in surprise. Vian asked her to move over and sat down too close to her. She didn't understand how it happened. His behavior is already starting to irritate her. She thought that as the owner of the Magic Tower, he would be able to remove the curse, but he says he can't. The man said he would be honest with her. She had to understand that magic was not working on her as it should. The reason for this is simple. She has no mana at all. Initially, mana comes from the heart. Every person, even those who are not able to use magic, has at least a small amount of mana, even a newborn baby. This means that everyone except the dead has mana. But Ellie is alive. She breathes, eats, and sleeps like everyone else. So what the hell is going on here? And that's the most amazing thing, Vian cried out in delight. He made her a very strange offer. To become his experimental subject, he had never encountered such a phenomenon. It sounded too strange, and besides, the word guinea pig could have been replaced with object of study. There may be side effects that could ruin Ellie's beauty, Vian told her. But he took her hand and promised to be very attentive. The girl was in shock. It seems he has gone crazy. She screamed that she would not become anyone's experimental subject. He could not even dream of it. Only a madman could come up with such a thing. Then, in exchange for participating in his research, he offered not only to remove the curse from her, but also to infuse mana into her body. Although the man had previously claimed that mana didn't work on her, he still had an ace up his sleeve. It's simple. You need to absorb a huge amount of mana stones, and then everything will work. If there are enough of them to fill the entire room, then that will help, Vian said, and touched Ella. Then the Duke suddenly appeared and grabbed the hand of the impudent Vian. Caden is angry. He once warned him not to talk nonsense. Since Vian did not hear this warning, the Duke decided to punish him a little. He grabbed the man with all his might and threw him aside. Ella was scared. She didn't even understand when he managed to enter. He had been watching them all this time, and that was why he got so angry. Vian got it pretty bad, because the Duke has more than enough strength. Covering the man's mouth, Kaiden said, "If you're done talking, then get out of here." A disgruntled Vian quickly rushed away as soon as the Duke released him. The man said that he was not watching them at all, but was just passing by and decided to stop the chatterbox. But his answer seemed too categorical to Ella, which made him look even more suspicious. The man put a paper on the table. It was a contract signed by them. The lady does not understand what is going on. The Duke said he wanted to change some points in it. He asked the girl to write down everything he was about to say. They started with point 26 on the second page. The girl became wary because he wasn't going to change the terms of compensation. No way, he's not that stingy, Ella thought, but she was still tense. But unfortunately, the Duke disappointed her. He said that he wanted to reduce the compensation by half. Whatever happened, isn't it too much to cut the compensation in half? This is unexpected from the Duke. So what about Clause 36? It defines the duration of the contract. This clause states that Party B must perform the duties in good faith until the charges against Party B are dropped. Caden stated that the girl can choose which of these points she wants to change. But Ellie preferred that it was better to have more money just in case. Then he began to dictate terms to her. Even if the charges from Party B were dropped, the contract would last as long as Party A wanted it to. Ellie is completely shocked as to why he changed the clause in this way. But the Duke is not going to wait, and she will have to write it. The man was unperturbed and simply said that this was a normal change in the contract. "Now you can go," said Kaiden, for he had got what he wanted and was now at peace. In the evening, Ellie and Darian were having a nice conversation by the fireplace, but the girl looked in no mood. The boy boasted about his success in swordsmanship. He said that his teacher even praised him, and soon he would become the same master as his father. Darian looked up at Ellie. He noticed that she was very tired. It was very noticeable. Of course, a lot has happened today, but she doesn't want to upset the boy. It's easier for her to say that everything is fine. Kaiden thought it had something to do with his father. Even though he didn't like his father, he hoped that Ellie would stay here with him. The boy felt sad and didn't want to say goodbye to her. Then suddenly he told her that he would like to see her in the role of his mother. "I don't care what anyone says, but Ellie is my mom," Kaiden cried out in tears. The girl knew that this child loved her, but she didn't think that he loved her so much, so she asked him where these feelings came from. She gently took his hand and began to wait for an answer. He replied that he missed his father. Kaiden's way of thinking is different from others, so Ellie finds it difficult to understand him every time. He heard stories about his father's youth. Usually grandparents are indifferent to him. But every time the father made the slightest mistake or did not live up to expectations, he was punished and locked in a room. Raising him in strictness as the heir to a duchy is one thing, but this is nothing less than mockery. His extreme distrust of others, unusually cold demeanor, and lack of empathy are all due to his abnormal childhood. The boy knows that his father pays close attention to him because he cares about him, and he believes that this is why he does not allow him to leave the estate. But, to be honest, sometimes he feels isolated. Sometimes he feels so tired and empty and can burst into tears at any moment. Darian admitted that when he first saw her, he thought that he would really die, but it was she who saved him. At that moment, she was really strong and was ready to kill the bastard who attacked the boy. So he started to see her as his mother, his protection, and Ellie doesn't mind that at all, because she loves him as much as he loves her, and perhaps even more. How can you not love a baby that follows you so blindly? And when Darian cries, Ellie can barely restrain herself from crying. It's hard for her to look at his tear-stained eyes. The girl herself is not against having such a charming son. She wiped away his tears and calmed him down. Ellie felt like she was in some kind of dream again, maybe because it was happening for the second time, but she seemed to be getting used to this state. But when you realize that you are sleeping, you should not wake up. She has clear memories of all the events before she fell asleep. The girl began to feel how something around her was changing. This is an unusual feeling. She found herself in an unpleasant place without being noticed. This place is a prison which is located in the Duke's estate. But why the hell is she here again? What does this all mean? She doesn't want to go through all this hell again. Ella's hands are cuffed, and she feels the cold again, just like on that fateful day when she was thrown into the dungeon like a sack of potatoes. The girl heard a familiar voice, and raising her head, she saw Vian in front of her. For some reason, he called her Duke Caden Nathan. The Duke wants to ask a question, but his voice won't obey him. "Now you're just a pathetic traitor," Vian told him, gloating over him. Caden can't move, and Vian already feels his power over him and considers himself the winner. He looked into the Duke's eyes, which were filled with rage. Perhaps Vian had not yet fully understood who he was dealing with. Caden wants to understand what is happening, but his consciousness is slowly drifting away. He can barely hear Darian's voice somewhere in the distance. This voice disappears and then appears again. He is calling someone. Ellie wakes up in her bed, Darian holding her hand, Caden watching nearby. The tearful boy asks her to be patient a little, even if it hurts. He begs her to wait for the doctor. The girl barely breathes. She moans in pain. Caden came up to her. He wants to take care of her, cover her. He worries about her no less than Darian. But the girl says that the blanket is bothering her and asks to be left alone for a while. She woke up covered in sweat and unable to move and had nightmares. The Duke said he would be outside and asked her to rest. Fortunately, after a while, her temperature dropped, but she was not yet fully asleep, so the doctor advised her to rest. Ellie was told that this time the recovery took the whole day. But she had only one thought. Why did she dream like that? Why did the Marquis talk about the Duke when he looked at her? Why he called her a traitor is still completely unclear. Someone knocked on her door. The butler entered the room. First, he asked how she was feeling. She replied that deep sleep made her feel better. Afterwards, the man said that someone had come to visit her. She could not guess who it could be. It turned out that the beauty Lydiana rushed to her. She was in a hurry when she found out about Ellie's poor condition. Lydiana is very happy to see the young lady. She is beaming with happiness, and her smile outshines the sun. Ellie said that she just wanted to go outside, and now she could be good company for her. But in fact, the girl is very interested in why the main character came to her. To be honest, Ellie was very surprised when she saw her. Judging by the plot, Lydiana could have been avoiding Ellie rotten, but instead came to talk about something. The girl took Ellie's hand and noted that it was very tender, even more tender than rose petals. But Ellie herself doesn't remember that they ever touched. The girl also said that her hair color is like molten gold under the sun's rays. Lydiana is crazy about beautiful and elegant things, so she asked Ellie for permission to braid her hair so that it wouldn't get disheveled. Of course, the girl doesn't mind, especially when they look at her with such puppy eyes. "You have the most beautiful hair I've ever seen," said Lediana, braiding her hair. She also asked Ellie what her hobby was, to which she replied that she liked to read books. It turned out that they had the same tastes. They discussed for a long time what kind of desserts and cakes they liked, laughed, and had fun. Lediana suggested that they go out somewhere to eat cakes when she had time. The girls chatted for a long time without stopping. They had a good time with each other, but it was time to go their separate ways. It was fun, even though they were both a little tired. Lediana said that she had planned to go to the Rubira temple today to ask the high priest for advice. The Temple of Rubir is the largest temple in the empire. In this place they worship the god Karmadan. Marquis Parshan also came there. He definitely said that he would stop at the Temple of Rubir. Ellie began to have different memories associated with him. But how could she forget such important things in the first place? The girl asked to go with Lediana, but soon realized that she had done it in vain. "Sorry, I'll keep you company next time," Ellie said. She thought it was a good opportunity and blurted it out without thinking. It happens to everyone. But she needs the Duke's permission. But how can she convince him? He is so stubborn. But in the end, contrary to her expectations, the Duke agreed, on the condition that he would accompany them. The problem came in an unexpected place. Darian didn't want to let Ellie go, even though she promised him she would return before it was time for afternoon tea. The boy is offended because yesterday and the day before yesterday, Ellie spent time only with Lady Lediana. The girl thought about taking him with her, but she didn't expect Kaiden to be so adamant. The Duke kept saying that you never knew where or when someone would target Darian. It is safer for the child to remain on the estate. But Ellie still insisted that the safest thing to do was to keep him close and protect him. Darian can't be kept locked up forever. As always, he became quiet and thoughtful, after which he replied, "Do whatever you want." The kid was surprised that Ellie had managed to persuade the Duke. No one had ever managed to do that before. Kaiden set conditions for his son that he must be close to him in the nights and not leave even a step. The time had come. They set off on their journey. The whole way the Duke was busy with his own affairs again. Ellie thought that maybe he shouldn't have gone since he was so busy. The girl looked at him carefully and noticed a wound on his neck. She became so excited that she jumped up from her seat and accidentally touched his neck, after which she immediately sat down and apologized for this behavior. "Father, are you wounded?" Darian asked, but what a pointless question if it was obvious. The man began to cover the wound with his collar before anyone else saw and started to panic. Noticing the Duke's displeased look, Ellie promised that next time she wouldn't pay attention to it. When they arrived at the place, Lediana noticed them, and she was very happy to see her new friend. The girl met Darian. Today they see each other in person for the first time. It seems that Lediana liked the baby. She bowed to him and smiled so kindly. But what about the Duke's reaction? He looks at her as if there is something between them that Ellie doesn't know about. Lediana kindly offered to give them a tour. They began by inspecting the largest room, the central prayer hall, but the Duke was forced to leave. "Looking at you, you really look like mother and son," said Lediana. Ellie is pleased to hear this because they are really close, care about each other, and spend a lot of time together. "There aren't many priests here," Ellie wondered. The lady replied, "It's because today is the day of the purification ritual. This is a monthly ceremony that takes place at the temple. Most priests are required to participate, so it is not easy to see them around." They entered the central prayer hall, which lived up to its name, an incredibly large place. Ellie is delighted, because even the statues here are very huge. Maybe that's why she began to feel strange. The sacred energy she feels since her arrival comes from here. The girl feels an indescribable divine presence. She touched one of the statues, and it was as if she had been hit by a nuclear wave. Something inexplicable blinded her. What's going on? She moved to another place again. It's some beautiful place. A snow-white, beautiful bird flew right into her hands, and this was clearly an unusual bird. She is definitely here for a reason. This is some kind of sign. Something is probably going to happen now. But was it really a bird, Ellie wondered, because she felt something very familiar and dear. At one point, Ellie seemed to awaken from a deep sleep. Darian looked at her with blue eyes like two lakes. The boy is worried. He always feels when she is feeling bad, as if he himself is experiencing the same thing as she is. The girl is perplexed. Just a second ago she was in the middle of a field. What is even going on here? Something inexplicable happened when she touched that huge statue. Why did it affect Ellie so much? So many questions and not a single answer. She stared at this sculpture as if enchanted. In order not to upset the boy, she smiled and replied that the statue was so beautiful that she had unconsciously stared at it. It's unclear what happened, but this temple is suspicious, and it definitely has a special effect on Ellie. But despite this, the girl suggested looking at other places. They entered the central hall of the temple, then into the garden. Darian sees such a beautiful place for the first time. But Ellie is still in shock from what happened. She tries not to show it, but everything is literally written on her pale face. Later, they entered the prayer room. Only the high priest can enter there to hear the words of the gods. Could this place possibly be the source of such an ominous feeling as she was feeling now? As she walked forward, the girl felt as if someone was behind them. She stopped and froze, sensing something bad was about to happen. The girl turned around sharply but did not see anyone. She decided that she was simply tired of all the events, so she was imagining things. It is becoming more and more difficult for her to pretend that nothing is happening. She unconsciously frightens others with her behavior. Ellie said she thought she saw the Marquis Dior. Lediana replied that he does not often come to the temple, but usually comes only in the evening. Even if Dior had come, there would have been a carriage with the Marquise's family coat of arms standing in front of the main gate. Lediana is right, but there is no rule that the carriage must only stand near the main gate. There is another gate behind the temple, but it is impossible to enter through it without permission, Lediana said. The back gate is connected to the Forbidden Forest, which is why access there is limited. The girl claims that ancient gods rest in this place, but she has never been there. Ellie thanked her for the explanation. At this time, they heard approaching steps behind them. It was the Duke, and he did not return alone. What Ella saw impressed her. Next to Caden walked the high priest, Lord Sequin. Such light and warmth emanated from him that it is impossible to describe in words, but Ellie does not feel it. It was an honor for them all to meet him. Ellie bowed to him. The lady does not feel a drop of spiritual power from the priest. In fact, it is quite disturbing for her. Lord Sequin praised Lediana for the tour she gave the guests. The priest said that the ritual was already completed, so he immediately came to this hall to see them. "We have settled our questions, so it is time to leave," said the Duke. But Lady Anna doesn't seem to want to let Ella go. She objected to Kaiden that it was too early to leave, and in any case, he could return first. But it's better not to argue with the Duke. It seems the lady has forgotten who she's dealing with after all. It's impossible to argue with him. The girl continues to insist. She says that Ella's opinion must be taken into account. Ella is, of course, shocked by this turn of events. Could a huge scandal really happen between these two? Gradually, the situation became more and more tense. The girl froze in anticipation of how Kaiden would react to such rudeness. His eyes clearly say that he doesn't want to listen to anything. The girl decided that she needed to stop Lediana before the Duke exploded like a nuclear explosion. She promised that they would definitely see each other again, and they left this holy place. While they were walking back, Ellie decided to ask Kaiden why he and Lediana didn't like each other. The Duke replied that he had good reasons for that. As it was earlier today, when Ellie announced her arrival, the Duke looked displeased upon hearing this. But the man insists that he has no interest in this person and no feelings. The plot seemed to deviate greatly from the original, Ella thought. The girl asked if he knew what kind of person High Priest Laud was, what his character was like, to which he replied that he was a gentle and compassionate man, and also a very capable priest. And he rose to the position of High Priest faster than anyone else. The temple attaches great importance to the amount of holy power that a person possesses. Compared to other priests, the power of the High Priest is simply staggering. But today, Ellie didn't feel a drop of energy from him. "Have you ever seen him use his sacred power?" the girl asked. She's just curious if he's really different from others. The Duke claims that this is true. He has seen the priest use holy power several times, but only during rituals. This ceremony is held twice a year to express a gift to the gods. Even at a great distance, one can feel the incredible holy power, Kaiden continues to assert. Ellie, hearing this, began to think that she imagined it. He is truly an amazing person, but he still has a flaw. Every action has a flaw in it, said the Duke. The High Priest's sister Loud is married to the second son of the Dior family. The girl thought that maybe that was why they seemed similar to her. Although it's not that important, at least something became clear to her. Ellie heard Darian's stomach growl. He was hungry because they hadn't eaten anything for a long time. The boy blushed and apologized for interrupting their conversation. The girl laughed and said it was a natural process. The Duke's estate was still quite far away, so she suggested stopping at the nearest restaurant. Darian had his first dinner outside the castle. He really enjoyed it, and the food was delicious. But he wants to take a little walk, so he asked Ella's permission. He took her and her father by the hand and said that he wanted to go for a walk with them. The Duke could not refuse his son, he answered, as you wish. Darian's delight knew no bounds. His eyes lit up with joy and surprise. And Ellie almost pounced on the man with hugs. He seems to become softer towards the boy. They walked, and delicious smells of a wide variety of food came from everywhere. Darian looked at the food counter and his mouth began to water, as if he wanted to eat again. Ellie was also surprised. She didn't expect to see such food here. She asked him if he wanted to try it. The boy replied that he was full, but there was still room for a little more. It's impossible to refuse such deliciousness, especially since this smell attracted him. Duke, wouldn't you like to try it? Ella asked, but he seemed dissatisfied with something again. He replied that it was completely unsanitary here. Then the girl thoughtfully offered the knights a snack. She bought enough for everyone. The men looked at each other. They were also very hungry and could do with some food. Don't be shy, it's very tasty, Ellie said, as if she really wanted to feed everyone at once. The knights began to eat with pleasure. By this time, Darian had already eaten everything and asked for more. Apparently, he really liked it. There was one last portion left, and Ellie offered it to the Duke again. She makes him eat like a little child, and he refuses as if he really is a child. But he still tried a piece. He didn't like the sweet and salty taste. The girl laughed, said that was the whole point of street food, and happily ate a portion for him. She noticed that after her words, the Duke suddenly fell silent, as if she had offended him with something. Kaiden turned away from her abruptly and objected that their walk was over. The girl noticed a suspicious man who was standing nearby and seemed to be watching them. The Black Hood alerted her. It was probably a kidnapper. She thought that the kidnappers wouldn't come because there were a lot of people around. The Duke gave orders to the knights to protect them at all costs. The men did a brilliant job of completing their task. Very soon they put Darian and Ellie in the carriage so that nothing would happen to them. The boy asked in a trembling voice what had happened, and the lady began to calm him down, saying that the Duke, as always, would cope with him perfectly. She said this to calm Darian down, but she herself has a bad feeling. They had already returned to the carriage a long time ago, but Kaiden still hadn't returned, so she decided to go out and see what was going on there. She didn't have the strength to sit still any longer. She asked Knight Jane what had happened since the Duke was late, but he replied that everything was fine. Kaiden followed the suspicious man, but he disappeared without a trace, leaving behind something strange. The Duke is delayed as he investigates. Jane says there is no need to worry. The girl became wary. It was probably a black aura. In other words, a curse was left at the scene. For now, this is just her guess, but it looks like it's curse magic that uses anger. If you touch it, your soul will be stained. Suddenly, Ellie caught the kidnapper's gaze again, and she screamed in fear. The knights ordered them to remain where they were and rushed after him with lightning speed. The girl's knees began to tremble, and she could hardly control herself. She told Darian that there was some commotion outside. Jane and Richard had gone to sort it out, so everything would calm down soon. But suddenly it dawned on her that the number of knights had decreased. 2 went with the Duke, and just now 2 more went after the suspicious man, which means that now only 3 knights are guarding the carriage. It's not a little, but it's not enough to protect Darien, the Duke's heir. The lady begged for the Duke to return quickly, safe and sound. With each passing second, she realized that they had better get out of here quickly. There was undisguised fear in her eyes. Darien asked to go outside for a while because he didn't understand the full scale of the tragedy. And Ella seemed to be stunned when she realized that the knights standing outside did not cast shadows. The girl and the child got out of the carriage and thanked the knight for his hard work. She said she was tired of waiting, so she and Darien decided to go to the toy store. When the knight suggested going together, the lady replied that there was no need to worry. Moreover, the store is very close and it won't take much time. Then the man calmed down and asked to return as soon as possible so that no trouble would happen. At the store, they were met by a salesman. He greeted them and offered his help in choosing toys. But the lady immediately made her choice. She chose a teddy bear and asked to pack it. The girl looked around. This store must have a spare door. She asked the salesperson if there was a back door to the store, and she had such a look in her eyes that the man got a little scared. She handed him a bag of money and said that they needed to leave this place without the knights outside finding out anything. Ellie explained that they seemed to be in danger, but she couldn't give details. They needed to run. The man said that there was a wooden door behind him, and if they went through it and turned left, they would see many narrow alleys in which they could hide. Ellie asked for another favor. If the knights come in, tell them we're looking at the goods on the 2nd floor. The boy looked at her with fear. He trusts her, but he can't do anything about his excitement. "Baby, don't worry. Everything will be fine," said the lady, trying to comfort the child. Fortunately, the knights did not look in their direction. They were chatting about something of their own. Darien's heart began to beat wildly, and his crystal eyes filled with tears. They ran very quickly, and without looking back towards the exit, they couldn't waste a second. It is unknown how long the store owner will be able to distract them. They need to get out as soon as possible. But the boy almost fell. His legs seemed to get tangled in something, and he stumbled. He looked at Ellie and said he couldn't go. "I will take care of you," said the girl, and took him in her arms. She hugged him tightly. Ellie looked at the place where the knights stood, but they were no longer there. This made her even more wary. Did they really discover that they were missing so quickly? Now they need to find a safe place as quickly as possible. "We urgently need to hide and sit it out until they leave." The angry knights are outraged. They do not understand where these 2 could have disappeared to. They are not rats that can sneak into any crack. The girl heard these men talking about her and her father, so it turns out they need both of them. The knights discuss how they will sell Ella to some perverted aristocrat once they find her. From their conversations, she realized that the guild leader was behind all of this, but he was already dead, so they allowed themselves to do whatever they wanted. One of the knights suggested exploring other places, and Ellie relaxed. She is sure that the Duke will be here soon and save them. But in fact, the knights had no intention of leaving at all. It was a trap. She heard a man's voice very close by. He asked who was hiding here. She clearly heard them leaving, but it was their cunning move. The knight put the blade of his sword to Ellie's neck. She felt the sharpness of the steel. Was this the end for them? But the girl didn't lose her head. She bit his hand with all her might. She broke free from his tenacious hands and ran towards Darien. But as luck would have it, the girl twisted her leg and felt severe pain in her ankle. At that moment, the villain grabbed her by the hair and pulled her towards him. The man got even more angry and shouted, "Do you even understand how much you pissed me off?" But they are afraid to hurt her because her price will fall if she is injured. They chose not to hit her in the face because there were other places to do it. As soon as one of the men swung to hit the girl, the Duke appeared out of nowhere. The Duke's knights captured the criminals and attacked them. With the appearance of Kaiden, they realized that they were finished. Their confidence dropped significantly. Due to excessive stress, she is so tired that she has difficulty standing on her feet. She literally falls off her feet. The Duke grabbed the girl and asked her to pull herself together. Ellie began to blame herself for what happened because if she hadn't suggested going somewhere, this wouldn't have happened. Kaiden is irritated by the fact that she constantly blames herself for everything. He ordered his men to sort everything out, and he himself preferred to stay close to Ellie and Darian. And the girl wondered why she was so sleepy, although the tension had subsided. She found herself in another place again, and she felt as if she were in a dream. This state seemed to haunt her. The lady found herself in some kind of forest. Everything around was green, and the sun was shining brightly. She again saw the same bird that she had seen in the temple. This bird sits on a branch and looks straight into her eyes. It is not yet clear what this could mean. At one point, she flapped her wings and flew away, and Ella thought she should follow her. It seemed to the girl that the bird was calling her to follow it, and that something was waiting for her there. The girl followed this bird and almost lost sight of it, but suddenly the lady froze in place. Ella saw a man standing nearby. The bird landed right on his hands, and this man turned out to be Duke Kaiden Nathan.